Hi, I'm Felicity, registered nurse, cosmetic injector, and founder of the Fit Injector Clinic. Welcome to my channel and video podcast, streaming on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. Today is episode 4, and I have fellow cosmetic injector, business owner, and new mum joining me. Welcome, Tiarne.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Pleasure. So good to have you on. So excited for this episode. So Tiarne is the founder of Prior Skin Co in Sutherland in Sydney. And today we're going to be chatting about being a mum and running a business, the transition from a business owner without a baby to one with a baby, and the identity crisis that occurred for both of us in the middle of that, maybe still in the middle of that, and how we are navigating scaling up our businesses, both having young babies. Ironically, we actually had to postpone this podcast due to Tiarne's little one being sick. Not having enough daycare days on my end, and then moving house. So mum life, right?
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much sums up our podcast, the end. So before we jump into it, Tiarne, tell us a little bit about you.
I am a cosmetic injector. I have a clinic in Sutherland called Prior Skin Co. I started that in 2019, so it's a few, 4 or 5 years old now.
Amazing.
I think. Focusing like yourself on injectables, skin rejuvenation, just slowly trying to build that clinic whilst being a mum.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And how did you become a cosmetic injector?
I originally was working for a doctor. So I started that way and obviously working in the hospital and doing that to get my skills up and then went into the business side of it after that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's so good. I love that. So we are both first-time mums, as I've mentioned. We've both built our businesses for many years prior to becoming mums, and now we're navigating mum life and business life. So let's talk about how we both built our businesses prior to that and how we felt about then being pregnant and then working while pregnant and running the business. Mm-hmm. So first question for you, Tiarne, is how much maternity leave did you intend on taking and how much did you actually take?
Well,
this big pause.
I planned on taking 3 months. Mm-hmm. I took 3 weeks.
Oh my God.
Yep. So originally when I was pregnant, I was like planning on working all the way up to 38 weeks. And I remember my obstetrician and everyone being like, that's very ambitious. That's ridiculous. Didn't see the problem. Yeah. And so the plan was to work up to 38 weeks and then try and take 3 months, but be flexible to come in for certain people, I guess.
Totally.
And then because I had to go off earlier, the 3 months was, some of it was sort of cutting into my pregnancy. So then by the time I'd had Teddy, I took 3 weeks and went back.
Crazy. Yeah, because totally unexpected when you did announce like, hey guys, I've got to actually stop now.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was directed by your specialist to stop?
Yeah. Well, I was actually, that was at about 32 and a half, 33 weeks that I ended up going off because I was basically close to ending up on bed rest. So originally they told me I was going on bed rest. I was actually in the clinic with a client when I got that phone call. Basically, go get a scan and then you need to be on bed rest. Oh my gosh. Yep. And then that scan ended up being okay. So then they said, look, you can stay working, but you need to take it easy. So then I just ended up being like, I'll go for 2 more weeks and then I'll just stop because otherwise I was scared I was going to be mandated on bed rest.
Totally.
And like my biggest concern was, what am I going to do about my clients?
Yeah,
so then I basically rushed through everyone for 2 weeks and then took a bit of time off. But then I didn't want to be off any longer than that after I had him. So 3 months turned into 3 weeks.
Yeah, totally. And you probably feel like, did you end up having to cancel people in the end there that you just couldn't see?
I did. Yeah. I tried to get as many people into that couple of weeks as I could. And then anyone that I didn't get through, I basically messaged them 2 to 3 weeks after having him and said, hey, do you want to come in? And I just plowed through them all before Christmas.
Insane. And and at the busiest time of year for injectors.
Well, that was the thing. It was not ideal, the timing, but babies come when babies want to come.
Totally.
I don't know how much you ended up taking.
So I was the same as you. My plan was to take 3 months and I planned to actually bring some staff on to sort of help me through that period. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. And I think being pregnant, I was sort of rushing my decisions there. And then in a way, I'm glad it didn't work out because it probably would have been detrimental for my business.
Yeah.
So the plan was for 3 months. And same as you, I wanted to work right up until I was due, even though the doctors were like, people don't usually do this. And I was like, well, I'm not in a job where I can just sort of check out and take a year's maternity leave.
You don't have that luxury
and
when
off
you're a
I go.
owner.
Yeah. And my doctor kept going, oh, you need to stop. I did have low iron, low blood pressure. She was kind of like, how are you standing up? And same was kind of like, I'm ready to sort of put you on mandatory bed rest as well. And I'm like, I've got more people to see, you know.
Yeah.
And
then you're like trying to waddle into like the clinic.
I remember my last few appointments, I couldn't actually get shoes on. I was waddling down in sandals.
Yep.
Yeah. Not ideal.
No.
And then unfortunately, at 38 weeks pregnant, I lost my mum. Yeah. And so that obviously I planned to just keep going right until I was due.
Yeah.
And so that stopped me in my tracks. And then from there, it was interesting. My first instinct was like, I'm just going to stop everything. And I didn't even know if I was ever actually going to come back to work after that. And something, I don't know, the hormones, the pregnancy hormones, when I started like having my contractions, this thing came over me. And
you just like, get through it.
I was like, I'm going to have this baby and I'm going to get back to work and I'm going to save my business, because the alternative was I'm going to lose everything.
Yeah. I feel like we work so hard to build our businesses up that, you know, you don't just want to watch it like crumble right in front of you. Yeah.
And even though I just wanted to like crawl into a hole and never come out again, I was like, no, like I'm going to fight for this.
I feel like it's part of your identity as a business owner.
100%.
And like, you know, we always talk about this balance and like, how do you find this balance between being a mum and being a business owner? But I look at it as like this balance between like your identity as a business owner and your identity as a mum, and trying to find the balance between those two things. And they're both equally as important. At least to me, they are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I found myself, I was in labour in the hospital on my phone, dealing with text messages, phone calls. I was mentoring some people. I was booking.
And I typical, isn't it?
Yeah. Prior to that, you might have got this as well. Even though I said, right, guys, like I'm done, I then had people who every day would be like, so if you haven't popped yet, can I just have a sneaky bit of, you know, and because I lived 100 meters away at the time, I'd be like,
well, it's like most of my clients know I live like a couple of minute walk away. So like I had people message me like, hey, like not sure if you've had the baby yet, or like, is the baby here yet? And like there I am, like, you know, in the hospital post-cesarean, like trying to feed this baby in the nursery and like thinking, sorry, but
actually, it's
a little bit not the best time.
Not the best timing for me. Yeah. Totally. And I remember joking with some of them and I'm like, yeah, I'll see you, but like if I go into labor, like if my waters break on you, like that's on you.
Yeah, well, I was telling people if they booked in, like originally when I was going to work up to 38 weeks, I was telling people if you're booking for say these last few weeks, like just be mindful I might not be here.
Exactly.
Like
you might turn up and I might actually not be here.
Yeah, literally. Like if I'm not here,
if you're
then
having, you know, if you're literally in labour, you're not going to be like, oh, quick, let me just reschedule.
No, I said to people, if you rock up and I'm not here, you know why.
Exactly. And with no staff. And then afterwards, you know, similar to you, it was interestingly, one thing I did want to mention today was the people who, you know, you've built this business as a one-woman show, this personal brand, and your patients are, you know, so happy for you to have a baby and they say, look, I'm not going to see anyone else. I'm going to wait for you. About 3 weeks after that. So I went back when my bub was only 4 weeks old.
Yeah.
And because at about 3 to 4 weeks, I was starting to get the text messages like, oh, hey girl, who would you recommend? And I'm like, right, nappy on, boob pads on, I'm there. And I'm like, I don't even know who I was. Like, it feels like this completely altered reality. Like, I think about
it's all a blur when I was back on it.
And I'm like, who was I? Like, I'm sorry if you saw me then. Like, I was probably just all kinds of crazy. But it's funny, right? You're just like, I'm recovering and my boobs are leaking and all these things are happening, but I'm going to go and do that anti-wrinkle and save my business.
Because you don't want to, as I say, like watch it just like fall apart right in front of your eyes. And like, so I did try my best to maintain the boundaries where I could, and I really prioritized when I did go back seeing the people that I had to cancel on, and then I would only fit a few extra people in where I could.
Totally.
I actually took Teddy a few times with me and was like baby wearing him, and so there I am like injecting people, and I warned them and they said that was fine.
And there's literally this baby sleeping in the carrier on
literally
you.
I was like injecting people with Teddy like
there.
You know, right here. And I'm like, do you know how like hard, I mean, I'm sure you know, like hard that was, like maneuvering that. I was like, I don't even know like how I'm supposed to like, how do I reach what I want to reach here? But we did it because you have to.
Yeah. And I was the same with you, just kind of, I guess, like picking and choosing a little bit about what I was doing. And I guess for those listening who aren't cosmetic injectors, just to understand, like, our industry is such a fast, rapid moving industry, and when people want their treatments, they want their treatments
and they want them now. Yeah.
And unfortunately, you know, they're only, I guess, loyal until their toxin wears off, right? Is kind of my slogan for this now.
I think with toxin, yes. I think filler people are a little bit more
and they're
picky.
happy to wait a little bit more, but I think, you know, a lot of people, and we're probably the same, you sort of wake up one morning, you're like, oh, it's all worn off. I need it. I need it now. I need it like this week.
Yeah.
And I love that for them. But it also, you know, for any cosmetic injectors maybe thinking about running their own businesses, or ones that do listening, is they will really be able to, they're probably nodding their heads, because unfortunately you build these businesses to a point, but if we took 3, 6, 12 months off, you can lose your entire
You would come back
business
to basically nothing.
And
there
then
are
you
some
have
people,
to start again.
There are some people that would come back, but most people aren't going to wait 12 months for you.
No way. And I
because
completely
that's
respect
3 to 4
that.
treatments.
Exactly.
Like, they don't want to lose their progress. They don't want to go wrinkly. Like, I get it.
Yeah, totally. And running your own business too, we don't have maternity leave, sick leave, personal leave, none of that. So, you know, from a financial perspective, I couldn't take longer than a couple of months.
My partner actually got more paternity leave than I did,
which is insane.
And he's still got leave up his sleeve to take. He's still got like 6 weeks left that we'll take later at some point. But he took, I think, 10 weeks off. He had 7 weeks of fax leave because I had the Caesar.
Yeah.
And then he had another 10 weeks on top of that of paternity leave.
Yeah.
So I was going to work and he was at home, and like we were both looking after this baby, but like I was the one who got cut open. And like then
I was just wanting to backtrack for a minute. So, you know, I had a, you know, vaginal birth.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can say that on here.
It's an injectable podcast. So.
And, you know, it was really challenging to go back at 4 weeks, but you had a cesarean and you're going back.
Yeah.
Your doctors were probably like,
oh, my obstetrician absolutely thinks I'm nuts. I think he knew this he started to figure it out, I think, as I was like asking him questions about like, do I have to go on bed rest? Like, what would happen if I don't? And he's like, you're not working to 38 weeks.
What are the exceptions, couldn't get my words out, exceptions to the rules here? You're like, okay, that's great for everyone else, but
what about me? Like,
what about my
am I
situation?
Special? Like, no, yeah. He knows I'm a bit crazy, I think. Yeah.
Totally. And I think we've kind of covered this, but like your patient's response to, you know, being pregnant and taking time off and having their treatments, I guess we've covered most of this, but an aspect that I did want to cover is this was happening to you at the craziest time of year, but also did you then get this, because I did with my patients, like a little bit of a panic before I went on.
I got a panic when I told some people I was pregnant. Yeah. So like I'd tell some clients that I was pregnant and they'd be like, what? Like, no. Like, and then people were saying like, you can't have another baby. Like you can't leave me again.
You just can't.
No. Yeah. And I'm like.
Yeah, it was like, I'm happy for you, but I'm also not. Yeah.
Yeah, like don't leave me sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think people thought I wasn't coming back. I had a lot of people starting to go,
oh, so
when you become a mum, or they might, a lot of people, I guess, prepared that my priorities might completely change and I might not come back at all. And I guess that was always, you know, something there. Like it was never going to be for me, but for them, there was this panic that maybe that would happen.
A lot of people do that, I guess. And you're in a role where you're not the business owner.
Yeah.
I think that that's probably something that you do more so because you don't have that same passion for it maybe, or that same drive to get back. Like with us, as we say, like you work so hard to build this business. Like I'm very mindful, if I don't work, I don't make money.
Yes.
I need money to live. But I actually enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
And I don't have like this job to just go back to if, for example, I take a year and a half off. It's not waiting for me.
Exactly.
Like I need to be actively working.
Well, that's the thing. Our roles aren't waiting for us.
No.
We are driving these roles.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like if we don't work, it doesn't build. The clients, as we say, aren't just going to wait. Like they'll wait to a certain extent. And some people, you know, they say, you know, I'll never go anywhere else. And that's lovely. But if I take a year and a half off, are you really going to go wrinkly for a year and a half? Probably not. And I don't expect you to. So you can't expect them to wait forever.
Pregnant and wrinkly.
Oh my God. I felt so haggard by the end of it.
Oh my God, me too. I was like, I breastfed her for like 6 months, and towards the end of the 6 months, I'm like, are we done here? Like, mummy's so wrinkly.
You're done.
And it's hard psychologically, like being an injector and being wrinkly.
It is because, and like when you're making those movements and telling people like frown for me, and normally like I can't, and they're watching you frown. Like, whoa. Yeah, and they're probably thinking, oh, like
especially if they say a new patient, and then I felt like I had to be like, so I had a baby, so that's why
I look like this.
Like this, yeah, totally,
yeah.
So, talking about balance, right? Mm-hmm. Is there a balance between mum life and work life? Have you found it? Do you have any tips? How are things
now? Have I found it? I don't think so. No. Have you found it?
I don't think so. And I was thinking about this a lot last night in preparation for our chat. And I don't think there's ever a point where you go, you know, and I'd love to know if there's people out there where you go, I've got balance.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I get to points with the business and I get to points with my little one Piper, and I'm like, oh, I think we're good. I think we got it.
And then they change.
Yeah. And either something changes with the business unexpectedly, or she changes in her development, and suddenly it's like, oh, forget what we were doing last week when we had it all good. This week it's crazy.
So I'm 7 months in. Yeah. And the amount of times I've just stopped telling people my hours now.
Good.
Because I'm by appointment only. So like people generally they'll ask like, what days do you work? And I'm like, well, it's kind of like, you know, this day. But like by the time you're booking for 3-4 months ahead, it might change by then. And so I say like, we'll book you for this, and that should be a pretty safe time, but I can't guarantee it. Yeah. Because as I say, as you said, like, children change, babies change like weekly. So, you know, 7 months in, the amount of times I've changed my goals, what I'm doing, how I'm going to grow this business, how I'm going to work. And then like there'll be some weeks where I think, oh my gosh, I just want to stay home with my baby. Yeah. And then there's other weeks where I'm like, oh my God, you need to go to daycare. I just need to work. Like it changes.
And you're constantly pulled between.
It's like a tug of war.
I want to be at home with this baby, but I want to be at work. And it's just this constant juggle.
And I think that's normal.
And we were both, you know, pregnant and then coming back being, you know, one woman, one room shows.
Yeah.
When very soon after I had my little one, I decided, because, you know, life's not enough, let's then take on this massive commercial lease and fit out a 5-treatment room clinic and get staff just to throw everything.
It's so funny that you say that, because that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I haven't announced that. So
you
heard it here first. So I don't think I'm going to announce it on social media. So unless you listen or watch this podcast, you probably won't know until I'm like, hey, surprise, we've moved.
And they've got to go quite into this podcast
to actually hear it. Yeah. So because I'm in the process of doing the same thing as you, not to the same scale, but fitting out a new clinic, I was thinking about this the other day, like, you know, why am I doing this? Like, and I actually think it comes down to like, I don't want to say crisis, but like identity crisis. And I feel like when you become a mum, and we've sort of talked about this with the balance, but when you become a mum, it's like, okay, who am I now? Yeah. And then throw in a business in that, and it's who am I as a mum? Who am I as a business owner? And I have found like going to work, like a lot of the time I'll go from 6 to 8:30 p.m.
Yeah.
So I spend all day with my son, get him sort of prepped. My partner comes home and then I leave. And that's actually me time.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy
100%.
it. And so like talking to my clients and doing something that I'm good at and that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And then, so I feel like fitting out this clinic, and I don't know whether you felt that, it's this like investment maybe into like you and to something that, you know, your goals and like you're not just a mum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know, for me, like you kind of touched on it there, it's almost like self-care for me because being here and being with my patients and having adult conversations and doing something that I'm good at and I've loved for so long.
It's something for you.
It's part of that identity that I felt like changed so much when I became a mum, and that whole like crisis of who am I now?
Yeah.
And so it was like, even though it was absolutely crazy taking this on, I think in terms of the future, it's going to be so much more beneficial for me and also for her.
That's how I
see it. Because I can give her the life that I want to give her in the future. And also, you know, right now, do I get to spend as much time with her as I want? No. Do I get to spend as much time as I want in the business? No.
But you probably will never find the 50-50, but you've got to find how it works for you.
Totally.
And like even having your own business, like for me at the moment in this studio clinic, like I don't have the luxury, not with how he is right now, to bring him in.
Yeah.
And not that I necessarily want him there all the time, but with, you know, the new clinic, there will be room that if I have to bring him in, he can be away from the treatment area. We have a porta-cot in the
office.
That's what you know what I mean? Like, but you've got that ability, whereas you had a very similar space in your previous to me.
And only when she was a newborn and she was asleep, I could bring her in. But as soon as she was awake, I couldn't. But yeah, like I have had her at times like sleeping in the office.
But that's because you've got that like that space now where you can do it. And so I think for me, that's where I see that flexibility coming into it and that ability to say, bring him in and spend more time with him, or you know, employ staff and have that help. Yeah.
And even though like I'm in the very early days of building up staff, I can see the future, and that future for me is actually, once this business is built up a lot more with my staff, that's actually me taking more time off and being with my daughter and working on the business a lot more than 1,000% in the business as it is now. So I see this really lovely time in the future where I maybe do get to drop her off at school and pick her up and, you know, go to the school assemblies and things like that I'm like, I wouldn't be able to do that if I had a regular 9-to-5 job.
No. And I think it's interesting that you say that, because I've thought the same thing. So like where we live, like I could say walk Teddy to school, walk to my business, go pick him up and then walk home. Yeah. And I see that in our future. I mean, I don't know how any future child would play into that at the moment. We're not even going there.
Do not sign me up for that. You've heard it here. Yeah. In writing.
I'm very similar at the moment. But, you know, I see this ability to go, okay, drop him to school, go to work, go pick him up, go home.
Beautiful.
And have this nice, that's how I see the balance, like not necessarily spending all my time with him, but the times that are important and making sure I'm present and more have the ability to be.
Exactly. A lot more quality time.
Which we have the luxury of having a business to be able to work towards that.
Exactly. Totally. Yeah. So let's jump into some of the questions that I've put on Instagram, twice now, with having to postpone Mum Life. Yeah. And we've picked a few really good ones. So first one is, how do you deal with the mum guilt, if any? You go first.
Mum guilt. It's a real thing.
100%.
I feel it daily. So I felt guilty originally going back to work. Yep. Like I felt guilty leaving my baby, like with my partner. So it's not as if I left him completely, like, you know, with a stranger. But just like going back, I felt a bit like, oh, you know, why am I doing this? Like he's so little and like he hasn't even probably woken up yet.
Just in my stomach.
Yeah. And then like I dropped him off last week to daycare for the first time. And I felt so guilty. Like I thought I was fine. I was like, this is good for us. Like this will be great. Like, you know, business Tiarne boss, she's coming back. And then I went to drop him off and I like handed him over and I got in the car and I thought, I feel so mean. I feel so guilty. Why am I leaving him here? Like, so that I could go to work. I didn't actually go to work that day, obviously, but like
did you have a day to yourself?
Well, I had a few hours to myself because I had to pick him up at
the orientation.
It was like a few hours. I got home and didn't know what to do with myself. I was like, what do I do? And I just basically kept checking the app for updates to see, like, is he okay?
Think, I'm going to achieve all these things, and then you're actually like, oh, I really miss them. Like, I don't know what to do. It feels odd, right?
Yeah, because it's like, it's that guilt of, it does feel really selfish. And so what was the question? Like, how do you deal with mum guilt? I just embrace it, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a way to like deal with it. Like your child
is always going to be there.
Your child is your child, right? Like they're always going to be the number one priority, at least to me.
Totally.
So I think I just live sometimes in this like feeling of like, I feel guilty, but then I try and remind myself, I think I sort of said this to you through our emails, like I try and remind myself why I'm doing it.
Totally.
Like I'm not just doing it for me. Like it's going to be better for him and his development to not just live in this bubble. Like the world is not just me and him. And I know he's only 7 months, but you know, I would rather him at least start to get exposure to the outside world, do something for his development. Like I can't do all those things with him at home.
Totally.
And trying to do the admin side of work at home with him clinging on to me and pulling my hair and, you know, wanting to play, it's just not realistic and it's not fun for him either.
No.
So whenever I feel guilty about it, I'm like, he's probably having a better time at daycare doing activities with them than he is with me.
He gets to grow up seeing you as this boss mum. Totally.
Hopefully.
And on the mum guilt, I think a couple of things. I think it's always going to be there.
Yeah.
Like you said, you know, you weren't just leaving him at home with a stranger. You know, same with me. And I think actually one of the best things that we did in terms of Piper's relationship with my husband, Zach, was actually the fact that I went to work when she was only 4 weeks old. And instead of, I've got a very controlling personality, and instead of me being this helicopter and telling him how to do everything and then him maybe kind of not forming a bond with her or not really sort of doing things, is he's just like, oh, hey, excuse me. He's like,
that's right.
Oh, this little baby. Okay, we're going to do this.
Well, they've got to work it out for themselves.
And it was actually amazing. They have the most beautiful bond. And she is so happy. Like, she never cries when I leave because she's like, oh, dad, fun dad. You know, crazy fun dad. And also, I love the fact I'd come home from work and he's like, I've worked out this really great way to do this and do this and do this. And I'm like, this is amazing.
But like the role of the dad is so important, and it is just as important as the mum. It's just different. And if you try and like falsify that and like make, like that's one of the things I always say to my partner, like you need to find a way to bond with him and make that as organic as possible. Like there's no reason or need for me to control how you do things. And so at least him having the time with him, he's been able to find that, you know, and I've supported him where he needs it.
Like I could not have had a baby with someone who wasn't going to work as a team with me.
Yeah.
And you would have had these comments too, like, oh, so who's looking after your child? And you're like, oh, the dad. And they're like, oh, you're so lucky. And I'm like, but I wouldn't really do this with anyone who wouldn't want to do that.
But I think it's quite a common thing, and I know a lot of like mums, like in my mum's group have said the same thing, like, you know, the dad does something extra and it becomes like, oh, they're a good dad. And I'm like, well, no, they're just being a dad. They're doing the role that they're supposed to be doing to look after their child, right? But
And look, yes, I'm lucky that my husband has the flexibility where if he's not out on a job, he's working from home and he could do, you know, all his work while she was asleep when she was a newborn and things like that. But yeah, like you said, like once they start growing a little bit, become little tornadoes, like we were like, daycare, bring it on.
Yeah.
So she's in 2 days, and like you talked about like that mum guilt of daycare, like I felt super guilty the first few times we took her, but she settled in so quickly, and now we drop her off, like as we're like coming down the street, she's like waving,
excited,
and she's like going hello, and she rocks up and her friends are like Piper, and she literally runs into the teacher's arms, and we're just like, okay, see ya.
See you later.
And we come to pick her up and she laughs and she runs off. Like she won't. And we're like, she's so settled.
It's
and
good for them.
Her development, like she's like saying so many more words. She went from crawling to walking. It felt literally overnight.
Yeah.
And she's like doing all these things. She's singing, like all these things that I think have just rapidly changed in terms of her development.
Yeah.
That maybe wouldn't have if she'd just been with us or it would have been slower.
This is the thing. Like you've got to consider if, you know, the time that you're spending with them, is it quality? Are you able to do the same developmental things?
I'm
Probably
no early
not.
learning expert.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like I just, you know, do what I can.
Exactly.
But, you know, I feel like the time away is better for both of you because for me, I'm more productive with work. Totally. And then by the time I see him, I'm excited to see him. I'm refreshed.
And you can focus on him 100%.
I've had my me time. My work is done. I feel like I go to work for 2 hours in the evening sometimes. Yeah. And I come home and I look at him in the cot and I'm like, oh, I just want to like grab you.
Oh, I miss you.
Like
so
I
much.
missed you. I was gone for 2 hours, but I've been with him all day. So my partner's been at work.
So it's better. Healthy, right? And maybe that is part of the balance, is that it is healthy to have that time away because like you said, the time you have with him is actually better quality.
Exactly. Like recognizing that it's not just for you. Yeah. It's for both of you.
Yeah. So in summary of that question, the mum guilt is always there. And I think it's just
finding a way to realize that it's not selfish.
Yes. To have time for yourself and to work and to do the things that you want.
Your identity is important as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Question 2 is, how old was your baby when you returned to work?
Oh, we touched on this.
Yeah, we jumped the gun on the question.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
So 3 weeks
old.
and 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Teddy's now 7 months.
Today, actually.
Today.
Yeah.
Aww.
Happy 7 months, Teddy.
He's so cute, by the way. I got to meet him the other day. Gorgeous. Yeah. And Piper is, this month she'll be 15 months.
Gosh, it goes so quick.
And she's like, she doesn't look like a baby anymore. She looks like a little girl.
They see, like, I feel like after that 12 months, their like growth is
because I got such a shock when I was giving Teddy a cuddle. I'm like, oh my God, he's so tight. And you handed him, and he nearly flew out of my arms because he's so light. Like I'm used to this like heavy toddler who's like these octopus.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that with like my niece and nephew who are like a little bit younger than Teddy. Yeah, like I expect, like I feel like he's like a giant.
No.
But he's only a few months older than them. Like the development is just crazy in that first
like
18 months. Yeah.
It's insane. Question 3 is, how did you find balancing mum life and return? We've jumped so many of these questions. We've jumped on everything. I'm pretty sure we've answered that one.
Yeah.
But I guess my question to them put out to people is, or statement, if you have any tips on balancing it, please reach out.
Yeah. I want to know your
secret. Some secret formula.
Yeah. I haven't found it yet.
No, I haven't found it either. Every day is a bit of a wild ride, I think.
Yeah.
Is it possible to be the primary carer and work in the cosmetic industry? For example, your partner works more.
My partner works more than me.
Yeah, which I thought that was a really good question for you.
Yeah. So my partner being in the police, he works shift work. Yeah. And so, for example, what was the question? Can you be the primary carer?
Well, and work in the cosmetic industry.
I mean, like I'm the primary carer for my son and I work in the cosmetic industry and I have a business and I'm fitting out a new clinic. I don't want to say I'm Wonder Woman, but
I'm pretty sure you are.
I mean, it feels a little bit nuts at the moment. Yes, it's possible. I think, and I actually don't feel super stressed about it. And I just think I'm just taking it day by day.
Yeah. And probably like you touched on is like, our hours can be flexible.
Yeah, I think you've got to be willing to work maybe hours that you might not originally go into this industry thinking that you would work. So a typical day for me on the days that I work would look like my partner gets up and leaves at 4 a.m.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And then me and Teddy will get up around like 6:30 to 7 and I'll go out with him during the morning. We'll do some like things with some of the mum friends that we've got and he's like friends, or maybe go see my parents or something if they're around. I try and do some admin, like I put him down for a nap in the middle of the day and that's when I really try and get my admin done at the moment, this new clinic fit out. It's when I'm making phone calls because he's quiet.
Yeah.
Otherwise there's like, I'm like rocking him and trying to make phone calls and they're like, oh, it sounds like you're running a childcare.
I am.
Yeah, just one.
Just for one, but yeah.
And then I prep everything like the good housewife that I am and get dinner ready
Yes,
and
you
all
are.
that, and get him sorted for bed. And then my partner comes home at 5:15 and I have dinner ready. Teddy's ready for bed. All he has to do is like get him to bed and give him a bottle and everything. And then I go to work at 5:30.
Oh my God, I've actually got goosebumps.
I go to work at 5:30 and I work from 6 till 8:30. Most of the time Teddy should be asleep in bed, but sometimes he's not. We're going through something at the moment. And so sometimes like last night I come home. I came home at I think 9 last night and he was still awake. Yep. But normally he's asleep, but like at the moment he's just not. And so then I take over because my partner's just had a few really hard hours after having a 13-hour day.
Totally. And then you've had your entire day being a mum and then your work day starts. Like it's full on.
Yeah. So I just have to have us both sorted and be really organised. And then we get up a few times overnight and feed and, you know, do all those sorts of things. And me and my partner try and do a 50-50 on that one. Doesn't always work like that because, you know, he does get up super early. And then we start again at 4 a.m. the next day.
It's full. Do you sometimes think like, what did you do when you didn't have a baby and you thought you were busy?
Oh, I don't know. Like I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, there was so much time for activities.
I know. Like so I was like, what did I do with all this free? Like I obviously had all this free time.
Even just getting ready to get here this morning, I was getting my hair pulled out. My mum picked him up at 7:20 and I left at like 7:35 or something. And in that 15 minutes, that's how this happened. Yeah. I rushed.
Totally.
I just got it done. And like I used to like spend so much more time in the mornings on myself. My coffee was cold by the end of like, you know, by the time my mum came and got him, but I sculled the rest of it down because I needed it. Yeah. And then we sat in traffic and came here and then I'll go home and pick him up and we'll start again. Yeah.
And I guess I can answer that question kind of on the flip side where my husband is the primary carer. Yeah. But we're both running businesses. Yeah. We've only got her in daycare for 2 days. We've got no family help here in Sydney. Yeah. So it has been such a juggle. And similar, like a typical day for us will be like we both sort of do, you know, the morning and get ready, which sometimes can be crazy. Yeah. And if it's not a daycare day, I'll do the same like before I come to work, and I'll usually come to work around like 10. I'll try and get like absolutely everything in terms of the house ready for them for the day, and then he'll look after her while she naps during the day. That's when he'll work. And then, you know, I'll come home around, you know, 6:30, 7, and then, you know, he's, you know, usually tries to get bedtime done, but we're going through a bit of a sleep regression at the moment, so she'll often still be a tornado until like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And so I've spent, you know, the whole day with patients and with my staff, and then I come home and it's like where you just want to put your feet up. It's like, no, mum hat back on, right, we've got dinner, we've got bath, we've got this, that, you know, play with her, spend some time with her.
There's no reprieve. But that's mum life.
And then by the time you actually put your feet up and you like actually say hello to your partner, you're like, oh, hi. You know, and it's like 11 o'clock.
I think sometimes we just do this, hi, good night, and roll over. And we're like, I'll see you. We'll try again tomorrow.
Like housemates that are just kind of like looking after the same
Maybe
child.
Tomorrow we'll have a conversation.
And then a daycare day is like today we both sort of get up, we sort of like chuck her out to daycare. She's right, she runs off. And then, oh my gosh, the stuff we get done on a daycare day though.
Oh yeah.
We think what used to take us like a whole week, in a daycare day, we get so many things done.
I'm looking forward to
that.
But
then also when we pick her up, I think even though we've had a busy day, we both feel really recharged, and we pick her up and then we're both just like, yep, phones down, laptops down. And we just, even though she's exhausted, we just give her that time with, you know, dinner and bed and bath and all of that, and just that really quality like family time that we try and have.
The difference with being a mum and mum life is children, like there's no off button. No. And there's no mute button. No. As much as sometimes like I try and turn him down and then realise it's not the TV.
You know, unless it's still, you know, in the womb or something. Yeah. The instruction manual and the mute button, I don't know. Has anyone found those?
I think like when you go a whole day with someone grabbing at you, like babbling at you, even if it's like happy babbling, it's very overstimulating and it's constant. Whereas at least when you come to work, you know, your patients, like, yes, you're talking,
but it's very calm,
but it's a nice conversation.
And controlled.
It's controlled. Whereas kids just aren't controlled as much as we might like to think that they are.
They're not. They're crazy.
So I think that's the difference with, you say you've been really, really busy on this daycare day and you've been doing all these things, but you haven't had this background, human going at you the whole day.
I'm 100%. I'm more exhausted on a day because I have every Tuesday is like mummy daughter day. That's dedicated.
Nice.
But I'm more exhausted on a Tuesday than I am on any other day of the week when I'm here with patients.
That's your balance though.
Yeah.
Having Tuesdays with her.
It's our dedicated.
And
I
that's
try not
balance.
to do I only open my laptop when she's asleep.
Yeah.
Otherwise I try not to have my phone, laptop, anything. It's just all about her.
That's nice.
And so there you go. There probably is a little bit of balance there.
Well, we haven't found that yet. But I mean, because Teddy's so young, it's not like I can have a whole day.
Yeah.
I can, but he's a bit young to do those sort of things with.
Yeah. And get out and about.
Oh, we get out and
There's
about.
A tip
but
for the future, maybe.
Yeah,
have a
I like that one.
day.
I like that one.
Yeah.
I think I'll do that one.
I think I'll do that one.
Yeah.
So I think, look, either way, in summary, I think either way it can work. And I think the good thing about this industry is you can be a mum, you can run a business, and you can pick and choose the hours that you want to work. Yes, it might not work for all of your patients.
It's hard, but you can do it.
But you can absolutely do it. You can limit. When I was still a one-woman show in Edgecliff, and I first came back, I was just doing a couple of hours a day because I was breastfeeding until 6 months. So I was actually in between those breastfeeding or pumping windows. I'd be seeing patients and then I'd run home, either feed or pump and run back. So yes, you absolutely can.
And I think something that's really important for people that aren't in the industry and are considering it and trying to find that balance between mum life and, business life, say, I think the important thing is to not look at people, say, like us and think that we don't have our struggles or that we're not struggling just because we're fitting out these clinics or, we have that already.
Yeah. Oh, I cry at least twice a week.
Yeah. I think it's so, I'm terrified.
Oh, yeah.
Daily.
Oh, yeah. My insomnia is just wild at the moment.
And I think it's so easy to look at people and just think, how do they do it like that?
Got it
they
all
make it look so easy.
Yeah. And I get DMs like that. Oh, you make it look so easy. Yeah,
and it's not.
It's not.
But I think if you want something, you just make it happen. And I think you just gotta do it.
And that's the thing. And like we've touched on a few times, the alternative to us not doing this is not having the businesses that we've worked so hard for.
Yeah.
And well, for me right now, I'd be going bankrupt. But
yeah.
He's chuckling.
Yeah.
But, and I love what I do and I want to keep doing this and I want to keep growing this. And again, we have mentioned this today is I want Piper to grow up and have the life that I want her to have. And I want her to see me being a successful businesswoman and that you can do this.
And doing something that you really love and knowing that they can do that too. And
exactly.
I also think it's about knowing that I want my son to watch me grow and not just look at me and go, oh, you just settled.
Yes. You gave up something.
No, and I don't think, you know how people say, oh, I sacrificed things for you.
Yeah, I gave up my career.
No, I don't.
And then you don't want to have resentment.
That's what I mean. I don't want to resent him for that. And I would never, but any decision I make needs to be on me. And, I want him to look at what I've done and go, okay, well, mum did what she wanted to do. I can do that too. And there might be obstacles, but there's not barriers.
100%.
Yeah.
You've nailed it. Well done. Love it. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 4 of this video podcast series. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. A huge thank you to Tiarne from Prior Skin Co. for joining us today. That's been an awesome chat, really insightful. I feel like I've gained some good knowledge about you and tips. Too. And I think we can certainly help each other in the future.
I'm going to walk away and know in the future me and Teddy are having a mummy and son day.
You're like, Tuesdays, book it in.
Tuesdays are our day.
Tuesdays are a great day.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much and
thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure.
It's lovely to be here.
We could talk all day.
We could.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.